Welcome back. Let's kick off with that. Remember some new developments, as it were. Victor Giwa joins us now. He's a legal practitioner from our studios in Abuja. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. But having seen how this is playing out, the recommendations of the Senate, first of all, how do you see this recommend? Do you actually think that these recommendations will be far-reaching? Oh, okay. Well, he's going to come up pretty soon because, yes, we did see or hear in that report how the Senate did speak about what they'd like to see happen. But the House of Reps on their part, well, remember that is ongoing at the moment, even though the Speaker did direct the clerk of the House to take certain actions. But, well, the Senate did come up with those, and you then think, okay, what next for these recommendations from the Senate? So how are they planning to give it, what? Do you call it the force of law? As it were, if it's a recommendation, how far can they go with that?
You know, one of the things that a number of people will be wondering is, okay, so you're asking the NDDC as a body to refund, or the IMC of the NDDC as a body to refund some money. The question then you want to ask is, maybe perhaps, maybe dive down, the money should be traceable, right? It must have gone through certain bank accounts, right? So why don't you just do that? Is there any way the Senate can order that, Is there any way the Senate can order that as part of their recommendations to whoever the agency that is going to take that on is? Is there any way they can take that on? And then we've been talking about the EFCC, the ICPC, and these other bodies, investigating and fighting corruption in the land. How far-reaching will these recommendations of the Senate go in helping them, or even moving them or instigating them to take action as far as dealing with these issues is concerned? It's really funny, Chamberlain, that on the one hand we are talking about the NDDC, and so many other issues are rising here and there. We heard about the probe of the power sector by the National Assembly as well. We just recently also heard about the probe of the NEDC.
Well, no, the honorable gentleman said, when he was reading that the money is said. He's not reading the news. If you're on the floor of the House, you expect to say with some sort of tone of finality.
There should be some evidence.
But that's why people can deny, say, look, I don't know what you're talking about. Exactly. So it's up to them then.
Well, we can say, yeah, that's perhaps a developing story, okay? Whether or not that is true, we'll see in the next few days. But it seems to be a season of probes. And we're not just talking about millions or even just monies. We're talking about billions.
So there are quite a number of issues, both the ones that played out in the House of Assembly and in the Senate. Well, let's get to Abuja now. Victor Giwa is there, and then you also have Honorable Dachun Bagos, who is a member of the Anti-Corruption Committee. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today on the program. Let me start with you, Mr. Giwa. First, the recommendations by the Senate. Well, yes, we have heard what they've spoken about previously about recommendations or resolutions, if you will, from the National Assembly. How do you see this recommendation from the Senate going in terms of whether or not it's going to be adhered to?
Well, thank you very much. It is, first of all, I need to state that it is a good thing that the National Assembly is actually looking at the NDDC. Of course, the House of Representatives is conducting the public hearing because of the homunculus corrupt, issues that are coming up from, various quarters about the NDDC. And I need to say that if you look at the NDDC, you need to look at where the interest is. If you look at the NDDC Act, Section 14 is very key in considering what Nigerians and what the National Assembly is talking about. Section 14 of the NDDC Act talks about public funding of the NDDC. And Chamberlain, you need to have an idea of what we are talking about. Section 14 says that the fund of NDDC shall be 15% of the total statutory allocation, monthly statutory allocation of all the Niger Delta states, the 9 states that make up the NDDC, 15% of their monthly statutory allocation. 3% of the total budget of all the oil companies operating both offshore and onshore. 3% of their total budget in a year will be allocated to the NDDC. And finally, 50% of the ecological fund, 50% of the ecological fund that is going to the Niger Delta states will be committed to the fund of NDDC. So you can see that we are talking about a large, huge sum of money. And of course, this is what is generating the interest. Where is this money going to? What kind of development are we supposed to see in this area? And now the National Assembly, the Senate have come up with certain recommendations. Now, first of all, that is appreciable. We appreciate that fact. But I have some issues with that. Because if you look at Section 17 of the NDDC Act, it says that the board shall be appointed, the board of the commission shall be appointed by the president, subject to the confirmation of the Senate in consultation with the House of Representatives. And so it means that anybody who is going to be a member of that board must have an input from the House of Representatives. So what am I saying? The House of Representatives is conducting a hearing. The hearing have not been concluded. And so it is very important that the Senate allows all the actors that are supposed to give evidence and testimony to those issues. Those are reports. You need to hear from those actors. And the House of Representatives should come out with its findings and conclusion before you talk about whether money should be refunded, how it should be refunded, so that we can have an holistic approach to these issues. And so the House of Representatives cannot be conducting a public hearing, which is still ongoing, and the Senate is still making recommendations.
Thing is, when you talk about where the monies are going, the Section 14.3 eventually tells you the board how to administer it, but that's part of what the investigation is trying to sort out. I thought Section 17 was talking about the powers of the board to borrow and such other items, but we'll come to that. Let me go on to Honorable Bagos. Do we expect any recommendations from, because, I mean, we've seen some actions already. Do we expect recommendations from the House of Representatives as well? We're not sure if they're going to re-invite the NDDC, acting MD, and whatnot.
Yeah, morning. Absolutely. There will be recommendations from the National Assembly. Because every public hearing and every investigation, there is a report. And the report was supposed to have been late yesterday, but because of the voluminous number of how bulky the report is, it wasn't ready yesterday. But definitely a report will be laid on the floor of the House. And not only that, recommendations will be made. Because this is not an issue that will just go under the carpet. One of the major and cardinal role of the 9th Assembly is to fight corruption. And if you look at the legislative agenda of the 9th Assembly, transparency and accountability and fight against corruption, it's very key. So it's one issue that the 9th National Assembly is very, very, very serious about. That Nigerians need transparency, Nigerians need accountability, and we're very happy and so confident that yesterday the minister have to even retract his statement on accusing the members of the 9th National Assembly.
Mr. Giwa, one wonders, what's going on with this? If the minister did accuse them, and as Honorable Bagos says, he recants, doesn't it appear as though some people are taking Nigerians for a ride?
Yes, that is exactly what is. That's exactly how it is. I mean, it looks actually like a drama. It's like one of these our Nollywood movie. If you allow me to put it that way. You see, this is a serious business, and interestingly, I am from the Niger Delta. I am from Edo State, and it really pricks me that monies that are supposed to be used for the development of the Niger Delta states and community. Like I said, I have a community where, as I'm talking to you right now, the report we are having is that flood has taken over a community in Edo State, one of the Niger Delta community. Hilushi in particular. Nobody is talking about it.
Mr. Giwa,
we are talking about the monies that have gone.
I just want to find out, will that be determined to be lying under oath?
Well, you need to look at the perspective of how he said it. I am not the lawyer to Akpabio, but what he actually said was that members of the National Assemblies, 60% of the contracts were awarded to members of the National Assembly. Now watch it. He did not particularize. He did not say the 9th Assembly or the 8th Assembly. If you are an honorable last year, or in the 8th Assembly, you are still an honorable. You are honorable for life. So what I'm saying is that he said, and I watched it carefully, and of course we were invited, as one of the persons to provide information. But he said that 60% of the contracts were awarded to members of the National Assembly. Now, it did not say House of Representatives. The House of Representatives is part of the National Assembly. So it was not too particularized. So I think that what should have been done by the committee, is for them to give him some time, or for the committee to ask him to provide the information. And I need to say it. It is also not proper, in my own view, that the Speaker in a session should ask the senator, the Minister for Niger Delta, to within 24 and 48 hours to produce the names and the list and the details of those contracts. I believe that the chairman of the committee, because the hearing is still going on, because we had, just some days ago where the Speaker, threatened to institute legal action against Senator Akpabio. That, to me, will amount to intimidation because the hearing is still going on. The hearing has not been concluded. I believe that it is the duty of the chairman of that committee to have confronted Akpabio with those facts and say, look, it is good that you are mentioning this, but we will also need to have those details. We will also need to have the contracts. We will also need to have these names and all the documents so that we can also, because that is one of the things they are investigating.
So, Mr. Giwa,
so
just one moment. You will also recognize, just one moment, Mr. Giwa, just one moment. You will also realize that he didn't say members, Mr. Akpabio, Governor, Senator Akpabio, didn't mention the committee. He didn't mention the NDDC committee. He mentioned the National Assembly. So for you to reduce it to the members of the committee taking him on that, you may want to respond to that one. But then, because he has mentioned members of the National Assembly, not according to you, particularizing whether it is even the 9th Assembly or the 8th Assembly, doesn't that in any way indict he himself, being a member, having been a member of the NDDC, subcommittee of the Senate before? Shouldn't he mention names so that people know who to call and your people in the Niger Delta will also know?
Yeah, I think I should come in here from what Mr. Giwa just said, Chambali, just to clear some of the perspective before going far on the direction Mr. Giwa said. You see, if you had followed proceedings of the House yesterday, Senator Akpabio wrote and replied the House that he was misquoted by saying that 60% of the contracts were to National Assembly members. The Speaker read the letter on the floor of the House yesterday, where Akpabio replied the House saying that he was misquoted by saying that 60% of the contracts went to National Assembly members. But on the letter he wrote to the House yesterday, he said he meant that 60% of projects of NDDC, it's on medical, and that's why they appointed a medical personnel as executive director of project. That was what he said on that letter yesterday. And I think it's very important for perception of the House that the press should be able to get that letter, digest it very well on the reply of Mr. Akpabio, because he said that he was misquoted. And if his letter yesterday saying that he was misquoted, and if we have proof that he said that 60% of the contract went to National Assembly members, invariably he lied under oath. There is no two way about that. If 2 days, 3 days ago, he said that 60% of the contracts went to National Assembly members, and yesterday on the reply that he wrote to the House saying that he was misquoted, that no, not 60% of the contracts when he checked, and that it was not 60% of the contract, he was misquoted, that 60% of the projects were on medical. So definitely he lied under oath. There's no two way about that. And you see, one thing, because anyone can say anything about the National Assembly because of the perception that people already have on the National Assembly. And like I said earlier, one thing that we want to really clear on the 9th National Assembly is that let's change the perception.
All right, Honorable Bagos, just hang on a minute. Let's get back to that tape. Let's just listen to that tape again, just to be sure.
We cannot close down Niger Delta because of the security implications of the region. Sorry, sir. We cannot close down Niger Delta Development Commission because of the fact that we are doing forensic audit. The NDDC plays a vital role in ensuring the peace and security of the region. And 90% or more of the resources of the country on a monthly basis comes from there. If you close it down in totality, all you have will be chaos. And you have a lot of, not just militancy, but you have a lot of insurrection. So it is important that people who have gone to court, people who genuinely did jobs, should be paid for their jobs. So for me, I'm not against it, because of course, who are even the greatest beneficiaries? It's you people now. Okay. Because if you look at your chairman,
Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister, that's okay. That's okay.
No, can I ask you that question? What is the benefit that the National Assembly is benefiting from?
It's okay, it's okay.
Are you asking me the benefit of National Assembly?
Yes, you just said.
I just told you that we have record to show that most of the contracts in NDDC are given out to members of National Assembly, but you don't know about it.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
The two chairmen can explain to you. That is why I was a member. I was a member of the NDDC committee.
It's okay.
Wait, you were a member of.
The famous it's okay off your mic. That's where they got it from anyway, in case you're wondering. But then, gentlemen, listening to that, Mr. Giwa, yes, from what he says there, Honorable Bagos insists that he lied on the oath, saying they've got documents to show.
Again, I wish you could play back the tape of the Speaker's...
Honorable Bagos, just hang on. Let Mr. Giwa respond to that now. Let's get Mr. Giwa to respond, whether or not that can be deemed as lying on the oath.
Okay, yes. You heard what he said. He said most of the contracts he has record that most of the contracts were given to members of the National Assembly. And he said, ask chairman of the committees. The chairman of the committee he's talking about is the chairman of the committee for the Senate and the chairman for the committee of the House of Representatives, as at the time those contracts in question were talking about, and it couldn't have been the 9th Assembly, because, it couldn't have, because that is not what is the subject of the investigation. So it will not amount to lying on oath, not by mere fact that he wrote a letter to explain, like Honorable just said, about the question is this. The question is this, is whether or not, and this is a former senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, a former governor, and the current minister of Niger Delta, who is saying that I have on record that most of these contracts were given, that first of all, he said they were beneficiaries. He now said we're giving to members of the National Assembly. No, I am not his lawyer, like I said.
The chairman will know.
It will not amount to
no,
lying
Mr.
on
Giwa,
oath.
did you hear the part?
Can
you hear me?
With evidence.
Did you hear the part where he says your chairman will know? Why did they recuse the chairman in the first place?
Of the committees. The chairman of the chairman of the House of Representatives and the chairman of the Senate, because they have chairman for the Niger Delta in the Senate and the chairman of the House Committee for the Niger Delta in the House of Representatives. And let me tell you, this, like he said, is based on record. And let me tell you, it cannot be far from the truth.
Okay, let me bring this back to Honorable Bagos now. With all of these that is going on, I know you wanted to clear something the other time, but if you also listen to the statement that he made, which you just heard, he didn't use the past tense. He used the present tense. It is you people, you heard him say, and he says most of the contracts are, not were, are given to members of the National Assembly. Do you think his letter is strong enough to reverse the fact that he wasn't speaking in the past tense, but in the present?
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, I just wish you could still play, you could get the clip of the speaker reading his letter yesterday. Definitely, whether he's speaking on past or present, and let me dwell on the present because I'm a member of the 9th National Assembly. And one thing that I know, and which is a fact, is that as a member of the 9th National Assembly, I will not and I cannot see any corrupt issues and tendency and keep quiet about it. And from yesterday, after reading the letter, the speaker gave the letter to Committee on Ethics and to investigate what he said on the letter. And even if any member is found culpable, definitely will face the wrath of the law. And again, in saying
to wrap up now, pardon me to jump in and ask you this one. Could you respond?
The 9th National Assembly just passed the budget.
I need to bring this in before we wwrap up. We've got less than 2 minutes. Now, Mr. Giwa did say that the speaker coming in at that point could be tantamount to intimidation because the hearing is still going on. There hasn't been reports or committees. So do you consider it as such? Can you hear me?
Oh, I didn't. Please come again. I couldn't hear it.
Mr. Giwa did say that the speaker coming in at that point, having even initially said, look, this is just question asking, no serious matter about it at the time he did. And then to have given him 48 and 24 hours is tantamount to intimidation because the hearing, the probe, is still ongoing. So this may lead to a predetermined conclusion.
Not really, because you see, perception is very important. Like some of us that are not even members of the Niger Delta, and the minister said members of the National Assembly, my constituents are already asking me where is the contract that the minister said that we have received. So to me, it's not intimidation, but trying to clear the air and to make sure that most of us are cleared from whatsoever allegation that the minister have brought into bear, and to tell you the level of corruption that is already out there, and to also a sound of advice to the executive that, look, this is the time that we should be able to look at all MDAs, not only the NDDC, that the level of corruption in every ministry, department, and agencies, because the members of the National Assembly oversee, have an oversight in all the MDAs. So now, invariably, every head of MDA will now saying that members are beneficiary of contracts from the National Assembly.
All right, just give us a moment.
Some level of
we'll come back to you. We'll just give a few more minutes. We'll return and let both of you conclude your thoughts in just a moment. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Well, Mr. Giwa, how does the Speaker weighing in at that point, how do you interpret that as being tantamount to intimidation?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's very clear, and with due respect to the Speaker, it amounts to intimidation. It amounts to prejudging it amounts to prejudging the public hearing that he himself set up by the House of Representatives. It amounts to threatening other witnesses who might come to substantiate or deny any of those facts. Because if you look at what he said, look, we are going to take him up on perjury. And look at the first paragraph of that letter, that the chairman of each of the houses exercise unusual influence. Unusual influence. So he's still holding on that position. What he was able to do by that letter was to say he was not referring to the 9th Assembly. So it is proper for the committee members to have waded into the issue than the Speaker. The Speaker has not had the privileges of hearing from other members. He is just the Speaker of the House of Representatives. He's not the Speaker of the Senate. What if, for example, somebody from the Senate comes in and said, yes, as a member of the committee of NDDC, I took contract because my constituency are entitled to do contracts. What if a member of the committee from the Senate comes out and say that? Will you now say that Akpabio was wrong? So it was prejudicial, it was hasty, it was intimidating, and I think he was prejudging the Minister for Niger Delta. And I think it is very, very hasty for the Speaker to have done that.
Well, you're a lawyer. Perhaps another lawyer might look at it a different way. But let me take this to Honorable Bagos now. Part of the conversations around this NDDC probe, just as you said, is really mind-boggling, and it is not new. In 2015, for instance, the Auditor General at the time revealed that 183 billion naira was diverted from the NDDC. And, he insisted and he stood by his word and he dared anyone to say anything against him. Now we're talking about another 80 billion naira or 40 billion naira, whichever, figures you want to look at. All these things are happening. The Auditor General's report has always contained part of these things. And it is an audit report. How useful is it for you, as a member of the Anti-Corruption Committee, to look at the books of the NDDC and do whatever it is that is needful? Because many are wondering, we already have this. Why open other panels of inquiry when we have an auditor's report?
Yeah, well, it's quite unfortunate that some of these development commissions were established to address issues of their region, and it has turned out to be that the development commissions is now the problem of such regions. Because imagine 81 billion being spent out of extra budgetary provision within 5 months and even under COVID. So that is a very serious issue. And look at 81 billion, what it could have done to the people of the Niger Delta. Go to Niger Delta today, you feel sorry. We discussed with a lot of members from the Niger Delta region and issues that are on ground. It's something that the executive needs to take very, very serious. From 2015 till now, I'm sure that somebody supposed to have been in jail by now, and nobody is yet in jail. And this is an issue that the executive really needs to look into, the issue of fighting corruption very, very seriously. They should take that seriously, not just the blaming game of the previous administration. Corruption is in every system, whatsoever administration that have come in. So it's time to really go back to the drawing board and look at these issues extensively, because we can't continue in a country like this. It is not acceptable. And the Anti-Corruption Committee is definitely looking into issues like this alongside the anti-corruption agencies. And its issue is an issue that it has not yet ended because the recommendations from
Bagos,
the probe will come
just
out.
one moment,
and once it's been laid, the anti-corruption committee
you're not
will
speaking
as well
to the,
take it
just
from
one
there.
moment, Honorable Bagos, just one moment. I'm asking, how useful is the Auditor General's report over the years in looking at the books of the NDDC? I don't know if your committee has considered the Auditor General's report as an instrument you can use to check the books of the NDDC.
Yeah, absolutely. If not because of the pandemic that has ravaged the country, the Anti-Corruption Committee have already laid and looked at its work plan to look at most of the MDAs, especially as reports that have been taken from the Auditor General's office, and Public Accounts Committee as well are looking into issues and most of the Auditor General's reports. And this is an issue that the Anti-Corruption Committee is seriously taking to the front burner, because most of the Auditor General's report has indicted a lot of MDAs. And we cannot continue like this as a country. And like I said earlier, the 9th Assembly, we have taken it as one of our cardinal roles to see that we open the National Assembly to be transparent as it is. And I'm very happy with the response from Akpabio, because perception is very important. His initial perception has given the general public that, oh, the National Assembly is corrupt. But at least his reply has said that, look, the 9th Assembly has not partaken in that because the 9th Assembly has a different agenda. I will not be able to speak on what happened in the previous Assembly. But what the cardinal agenda of the 9th Assembly is that, look, we must open the National Assembly for people to see how transparent it is. And that is why some of this probe and public hearing is on the front burner. So definitely, the Anti-Corruption Committee is looking into the Auditor General's report. The Anti-Corruption Committee is looking into all MDAs, not only the NDDC. We have a lot of work to do for the Nigerian people, because we cannot sit down and the perception outside is saying that we are millionaires, we are billionaires, and so on and so forth. As an individual, okay, I know the role my people voted me
Mr. Bagos, just a minute.
Assembly,
Mr. Giwa, so does that address those issues for you, for those members who think that, well, yeah, this may have vindicated members of the 9th National Assembly? Is that how it works?
Well, for them, I could say that I can concede that it has. But that has not still excluded, because contracts will still be awarded. And it is not even the first time we are hearing. There was a time the president was talking about constituency project of the National Assemblies. Some of these members of the National Assemblies in their committees have become award-receiving centers, where you are a committee and while you are supervising certain agencies of government, you start asking for contracts. You will tie it to your constituency. This is not the first time it is an issue. Most members of the National Assembly have become contract-receiving members and senators. And it is there. It was a major issue some few months ago. Even it drew the attention of the president. And when we start talking about probing constituency project, which in some cases they were not even executed. And as a lawyer, I'm also aware that a lot of contractors receive contracts from members of national assemblies, and they will tell you they are doing it for their constituency. So it is not actually out of place for you to see members. And again, if you look at it, some of the members will tell you they are also Nigerians, and they can also do contracts. So it is just very simple. But the point is that Nigerians and our members who go to National Assembly should look at the development of the communities, should look at the interests of the people, should ensure that Nigerians derive benefits from such process, including the NDDC. And I think that is what we should pursue.
So, Honorable Bagos, what if
Mr. Giwa have raised.
Okay.
Go
ahead.
Because every National Assembly member is representing a constituency from the entire 36 states. And every constituency has a constituency project domiciled in different MDAs. Because what we usually do is to generate needs of our constituents and give it to the executive. National Assembly members don't execute projects. As far as I'm concerned, this is my 1 year in the National Assembly. All I know is that some projects have been domiciled in my constituency, which we lobby to make sure that, look, this project, even if it is road, even if it is water, whatsoever, has been domiciled in our constituency. And to execute those projects is the responsibility of the MDAs. That is exclusive the responsibility of the NDAs. And again, if you recall what Mr. Akpabio said during the public hearing, he said that, look, when he was accusing the chairman of the committee of executing projects, and he now retracted his statement even at the public hearing, he said, no, that the project, the contract is domiciled in the chairman's constituency, not that the contract was given to the chairman. So these are issues that I really wish we could really come out to understand and look at those levels, because no member of the National Assembly is a contractor. And I can assure you from the Anti-Corruption Committee, from Ethics Committee, and so on and so forth, if any member of the National Assembly is found capable of engaging in contracts, definitely he will fail the wrath of the law. Because we said that, look, this 9th National Assembly, we must be transparent in that. So Mr. Giwa's perception in that National Assembly members are contractors, that is absolutely wrong, especially from what I have seen from the 9th Assembly.
Now,
we are here to see that, look,
Honorable Bagos, just a minute.
Do we
go ahead and say, well, look, the nature of some of these things is such that there are times that they could get this contract even recently and then they backdate this contract. We've seen these kind of things happen. So should we then say, on the strength of what you say, that no member is a contractor or not? Do we go back to, say, 5 years and see who got what from the NDDC just for the benefit of doubt? Would that be okay to do that?
Well, absolutely, because if
even before they join the National Assembly,
NDDC can really come out with such issues, why not? Because Nigerians need to know. And not only that, the perception that is already on the National Assembly, which some of us are looking at how we can make things to move right, definitely we want to know. If previous members of the National Assembly have benefited from the NDDC or any MDA's contract, definitely we will need to know so that Nigerians will know that we are on a new phase of legislation. Our role that we need to carry out, we need to be able to execute it. But if previous National Assembly members are contractors, then definitely we need to know so that we'll be able to tell the general public that, look, the previous National Assembly members were contractors, but the 9th National Assembly, this is what we need to do. And again, it's something that we cannot only do it alone. Executive is there. The executive that executes most of these contracts. Who are the executive giving some of these alleged contracts to the National Assembly members? Because if the executive are giving the National Assembly members contracts directly, then definitely that is part of the corruption that we are all
that could then
about.
mean that perhaps no member of the National Assembly will unduly call or send people to those members to go give them contracts, perhaps. But Mr. Giwa, just give us your concluding thoughts now as we wind down on this one. So he seems justified that you didn't seem to, that he says you don't have those facts correct to say that members are contractors.
Let me put it in perspective, and I think you should get it. What I know is that, or what I can infer from what Senator Akpabio said, and if Senator Akpabio being a former senator, who is this? Sorry, excuse me, 1 minute. No, sorry, what I'm saying, just 1 minute. Just 1 minute.
When he has retracted his statement saying that, look, what I said was on error or whatever, he's later clearly said that, look, members of the National Assembly are not. So you cannot continue to dwell on what Akpabio said because of his perception on what he has said.
Let me say what I know. Now, what I know is that members of the National Assembly in their various committees interface with the executives and head of MDAs, and especially when projects are in their constituency, like he said, they always ask and request that they recommend contractors. It is not necessarily their companies, and I challenge them to prove me wrong. It is not necessarily their companies. They are not directors in those companies, but they will tell you, let us recommend contractors that will execute some of these projects. I am aware, I know, and I've seen them. I have fought for some contractors who I asked how they got the job, and they told me they were recommended by members of the National Assembly. So I'm speaking of facts. So I am not saying the companies might not belong to the members, but in most cases, and of course, my honorable here knows, those honorables and senators, they recommend these companies. The companies belong to their friends. The company might even be some good companies. But I know for sure that the members of National Assembly, in their various committee, do recommend companies to execute projects for the executive, and I've challenged them on that.
Honorable Bagos, is that right? Just briefly, we need to wrap up.
Mr. Giwa is coming back to track by saying that members of the National Assembly are not contractors, but
yes,
some of them do recommend, they don't even have any influence on that contract. And one thing I can tell you is that if you go to ICPC today, ICPC, it's monitoring most of the constituency projects. And one important thing which we even had an interface with the ICPC chairman 2 weeks ago on public procurement is that he categorically said that they are going around projects, and most of those constituency projects are executed. The ones that are not being executed are the ones that they're looking at how they will face prosecution and to even see how they will refund that. And
those were two separate things. The recommendation.
MDA, if any agency or MDA carry out or give out a contract just by mere recommendation by a member of the National Assembly, then that is fraud and that is wrong.
All right, gentlemen, we need to wrap up at this point in time. Honorable Dachun Bagos, member, Anti-Corruption Committee, and Mr. Giwa as well, who is a legal practitioner. Thank you both for talking to us this morning. We will be back in just a moment. Stay with us.